Hey, it's Christina with Tinagirl Travels, and today I'm going to walk you through our trip to northern France, visiting Vimy Ridge, the D-Day beaches, Mont Saint-Michel, and where we stayed, what we saw, and what we did. So maybe you're planning your own trip and want to get a sense of what planning a trip like this might look like, how much time you need, what driving through the area and navigating those toll roads looks like. So let's get started. This trip actually started 2 years earlier. We were visiting Paris and wondered if we had enough time to pop up to the north of France and see some of the D-Day beaches. And after some research, we decided we needed more time for this, so it would have to be another trip, and I'm so glad we decided to wait. There are lots of day tours from Paris that you can arrange, and if that's all the time you have, then do it. There is a benefit to being driven around and brought to the sites with a guide. For Keith and I, we love being on our own schedule, and you know what? We had the luxury of 5 days to spend in the north and then 5 more days in Paris. We arrived from Canada into Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris, where we rented our car. Our plan was to get right out of the city and head in the direction of Vimy Ridge. So we stayed on the outskirts of a town called Arras, just south of Vimy. It's 170 kilometers or 105 miles, and it took us about an hour and a half to drive. I love the highways in France. They have rest stops about every 30 to 50 kilometers. They have restaurants with gas stations, washrooms, coffee shops. They have everything there. It makes driving so easy. I booked a super cute stay at a place called Plumes and Cotton Bed and Breakfast. I found it online. The main building is 100 years old and there are only 3 suites, so it's very personal. Our room, the Cotton, was a lovely cottage in an outbuilding, which was probably an old horse stable originally. On our first day, when we arrive, we always take a few hours to sleep and then get up for dinner. Now, this is technically day 1, and all we've done is found our rental car, driven to Arras and found our hotel and gone to sleep. It sounds like a waste of a day, but really what we're doing is setting ourselves up for better days ahead. Now, this is where we figured out something interesting. March is a good time and a bad time to travel in France. Good because there are not a lot of tourists and you basically have the place to yourself, and bad because a lot of the restaurants and businesses are closed. In my mind, I thought we would be having dinner in a cute bistro, but we couldn't find anything that was open, and if it was open, it was packed, or we couldn't find parking. So we ended up finding this buffet in kind of this strip mall, and it was hilarious. There was a robot delivering drinks, and it was basically a French, Chinese, or Japanese buffet. And the funny thing about it was that it was exactly what we needed. The food was actually really good. Endless escargot, all kinds of salads, seafoods. Look at those crab legs and that shrimp. You could choose raw meats and noodles and veg, and they would cook them up for you. They had comfort foods like cheese and crepes and desserts. Oh my goodness, the desserts. It was all so good. It turned out to be a really fun, try everything kind of meal, and I would totally go there again. So for those of you planning a trip like this from North America, especially the West Coast, and you're new to long haul travel, unless you have some kind of superpowers and you can sleep well on planes, which I can't, let me warn you, you might feel like a pile of garbage when you arrive. So we already know this about ourselves. We did 2 European adventures last year alone, and we know the first few days can be kind of rough. Jet lag is another video altogether for another time. What I'm trying to say is have some grace for yourself and don't plan too much stuff for the first day or 2. After a decent night's sleep, we had breakfast at our bed and breakfast, and that was an experience as well. Oh my goodness, such a beautiful little dining room in the main house. The neighbor made the croissants. It was a lovely made-to-order breakfast, and I would stay here again for sure. I'll be sure to add links below to the places I talk about in this video, including this hotel, Plumes and Cotton. So we checked out of our hotel and headed to Vimy Ridge, and that was about a 10-minute drive through the French countryside. It was so beautiful. And it was really interesting when we arrived at about 9:40 a.m. There was no one there. And we wondered if it was closed, and it wasn't. We had the entire place to ourselves, and that is a pretty fantastic experience. So we got our tickets for the tour. You definitely want to take time for the tour. It was a super moving experience to be there and be a Canadian visiting Vimy. And the guides are Canadian university students doing a semester here as a tour guide. And what's particularly moving about that is that the soldiers that fought in these trenches in World War I were the same age as these tour guides.
Which was here at Vimy. So if anybody has any questions, I'd love to answer. Otherwise, we can get going towards the tunnel.
There are two areas here that you're going to want to see for sure. The main area is the Vimy Ridge Visitor Education Center with the museum, the battlefield, and the trenches, and the subway, which is the underground tunnels. And seeing the terrain and understanding how close the trenches were to each other for those battles, and hearing the stories of what happened here, it's just unreal. And then you'll drive or walk further to the ridge where you'll find the very moving Canadian National Vimy Memorial. And I'm so glad we took the time to go and see this site and honor the Canadians who fought here. There are 2 cemeteries located on the memorial site that you can visit as well. If you want to do a little research on the Vimy Ridge site, I'll add links below. We spent about 3 hours at Vimy and then drove this route to Arromanches, which is a city right on the water. This drive is almost 400 kilometers or about 250 miles and about a 4-hour drive. So I'm using the Rome to Rio website to show you this picture. Rome to Rio is also available as an app, and if you're not already using it to plan your trip, you definitely need to start. It's one of my favorite apps and it's free. All right. So we learn all of this in history class, in middle school and high school, but if you weren't paying that close attention, here's a super quick reason why this area is so important. D-Day happened on June 6th, 1944, and this past year was the 80th anniversary, and it was a big deal. They were prepping for this even while we were there in March. This was the largest amphibious invasion in history and a real turning point in World War II, where Allied forces landed on 5 beaches in Normandy, France. That's the top part of France along the English Channel, to liberate Europe from Nazi control. The beaches were codenamed Utah and Omaha, where the US forces landed, Gold, where the British troops arrived, Juno, where the Canadian forces landed, and Sword, which was also taken by the British. This massive operation involved over 156,000 troops and was a crucial step toward the Allies' victory in war. Keith and I love to listen to podcasts when we go on road trips, and one that I found that was absolutely fantastic was called D-Day, The Tide Turns by Noiser Network. I'll add a link below, but you can find it wherever you listen to podcasts. It is so well done and will really bring these beaches, the area, and what happened on D-Day to life for you. So check that link out below. Okay, I know another thing people are going to write me about. They're going to say, I can't believe you missed this, or you didn't see that. Let me tell you, you could spend a month here and not see everything. Every single village has a story. You have to do your own research and decide what's important to you. Like for instance, I love a good museum, but after a while, especially in Europe, I just get museumed out, and I want to give the museums the time they deserve. And even with a full 5 days, by the time you add in all your driving, stopping for meals, finding your hotel, it all takes time, and we always say, we'll see it next time. And just like this trip, this is our next time trip. So we stayed in a hotel called the Villas in Arromanches. It's a beautiful 4-star hotel, lots of free parking, walking distance into town, which was great, and free Wi-Fi. And there is a heated pool as well in the summer. We didn't see it, but it was early spring for us, so it was too cold anyways. I'll add a link to this hotel below. It was really nice. From our room, we could actually see the water, and that was so beautiful. This is the beach here. It's just down from our hotel, Arromanches-les-Bains was vital during D-Day as the site of two artificial harbors, a temporary port built in Britain and towed here. It allowed them to unload troops and supplies quickly, supporting the liberation of France. So remnants of the harbors can still be seen in the water and remain as a reminder of their importance. And you can walk right up to them and have a look. They're huge. It's just so amazing. This is such a beautiful little village to explore. My favorite breakfast on the entire trip was actually in a cute cafe here by the water called Le Plague. And I don't speak French, but it reminded me of the plague, and Keith happened to wake up that morning with the plague. So it seemed fitting. Poor guy, he's totally congested, but determined to have a great day. Here's the menu. I ordered the galette Florentine. It was a buckwheat crepe with spinach, egg, and cream cheese. It was so good. And then, of course, we had to order dessert, which was a crepe as well. We tried to go here for breakfast the next day, but strangely, they didn't open until 11 that next morning. That brings me to a little bit of information you need to know. We found the hours of operation all over the villages to be a bit willy-nilly everywhere. And stores and cafes seem to open when they feel like it and just randomly close whenever. We were walking down the street in this town and I was going from shop to shop, and when I stepped out into the street to pop into the next shop, all the shops were suddenly closed. And I asked the shopkeeper of the store I was in what was going on, and she just shrugged her shoulders and said something in French that I didn't understand, and that was it. No more shopping for me. If you watch my channel, Tinagirl Travels, you know that I do a lot of global souvenir shopping videos. And one thing I really wanted to buy here that was going to be meaningful was a poppy that I could wear on Remembrance Day every year. So I actually bought 2 of them at Vimy Ridge, and they were only €2 each. And when I got home and showed my friends and family, they all wished I had brought them home one as well. How meaningful to have a poppy from Vimy or the D-Day beaches. I also bought this one from a shop here in Gold Beach. It's pretty fancy. It's designed by a designer in Paris. I wore it for the week leading up to Remembrance Day and had so many people comment on it, and it was really cool to have that backstory to tell them. After breakfast, we took a drive from Arromanches-les-Bains to Juno Beach, about 20 minutes away. Juno is where the Canadians landed on D-Day. These are all cute little towns, and you can spend time in them. But if you're short on time and you want to see the memorial, head to the Juno Beach Center. You'll find a beautiful gift shop and a museum, interesting to walk through. There's a bunker down near the beach, and there are some monuments to look at as well. It was super foggy this day, and it kind of added to the mood, I guess. So, in my day job, I actually work at an elementary school in special education, and I always love to bring meaningful things home to the students in our class. So what I did was find 30 interesting stones on Juno Beach, and when I got home, I put each one in a Ziploc bag, along with the following message. And the kids loved this, and I had a few extras and I gave them to some of the teachers who really loved this as well. Honestly, those kids will probably keep these rocks forever, and you know what? It was a free gift and it's a piece of history. All right, we have to move on. We really wanted to cover Juno Beach and the American beaches today, so we drove towards Omaha Beach and stopped at the Normandy American Cemetery, and that's a 45-minute drive. Talk about a moving experience. 10,000 Americans are buried here. It's a sobering thought as you stand here looking over all the crosses. As you can see, again, it's super heavy fog on this day, so we ended up bypassing the beach itself. Unfortunately, missing the Overlord Museum, which I've heard is really good. We missed the bunkers and the monuments as well. But from Omaha to Utah Beach, you're looking at another 35-minute drive. And these drives are lovely, just winding your way through the French countryside, through the cutest villages. It's like a postcard around each turn. As we head towards Utah Beach, we came across a little village called Sainte Marie du Mont, and we stopped here to see the church, which had such an interesting history. The story of Germans hiding out inside, and there was actually a battle against the American paratroopers who landed here, and some of it happened right inside the church. Definitely stop here for a few minutes, read the little plaques, and it tells you the whole story. It's so interesting. From here, we drove a few more miles to Utah Beach. There are some really interesting monuments like this famous one of the lone soldier. There was a great little cafe restaurant here as well. Inside, you'll see family members of soldiers that arrived here on D-Day visiting the cafe and leaving handwritten notes about their loved ones who were here. It was really moving to read the inscriptions that are written all over the walls and all over the woodwork. From Utah Beach, we headed to a place called Sainte-Mère-Église, 18 minutes away. This is also where the paratroopers came in, and I really wanted to see this monument, telling the story of American paratrooper John Steele, who got caught on the church steeple. It's a crazy story. They were supposed to come in shielded by the darkness of night, and there was this house fire that lit up the whole sky, so the Germans could actually see all the paratroopers coming in. It's very sad, but he got caught on the church steeple. He pretended to be dead for 2 hours. There's fighting happening all around him. It has a good ending, I'll tell you that, but I'm not going to tell you how the story goes. I'll link a story below in the description for you to check out. This town had a really interesting airborne museum as well that we visited. It was right across the street from the church with the John Steele Memorial, and right beside that was a really nice bakery that we had lunch at. Check out these pastries. The north of France is known for their apples, so be sure to try the apple tarts and the apple ciders that this area is famous for. Alright, so at this point we're pretty much D-Day'd out. There's only so much information you can take in and so much emotion attached to all of it as well. So I felt like we had seen enough for this visit of the war memorial type of stuff. So we're moving on to another incredible adventure here in the north of France that you absolutely cannot miss seeing. So next we're headed to the UNESCO World Heritage Site of Mont Saint-Michel. This place is like Disneyland for adults. Alright, so let's have a look on the map. So driving from Sainte-Mère-Église to Mont Saint-Michel will take about an hour and 15 minutes, a distance of 125 kilometers or about 77 miles. We're staying in a small village called Doucet, or as I called it and drove Keith crazy, Ducky. We stayed in this little fantastic hotel that used to be a mill, and it sits right alongside this beautiful bridge that was built in the 1500s. This is actually a Best Western now, and I do have an in-depth video on this hotel on my channel if you're interested in staying here. You can check that out. So Doucet is a cute little village, but let me warn you, in March there's hardly anything open. Thankfully the hotel offered a dinner and a breakfast. They were extra, but there was nothing open for dinner in the town, so we were happy to eat there, and the food was actually really delicious. It was made to order. You chose what you wanted from their menu and they made it for you that night. The next morning, we headed out to Mont Saint-Michel, only about a 10-minute drive from Doucet. We had no idea what to expect as we arrived at Mont Saint-Michel by car. You cannot actually drive right up to it. There is a parking lot and then you take a shuttle in. If you want more details about all of that, I have a video on parking and getting to Mont Saint-Michel that I'll link to the end of this video. So Mont Saint-Michel is a stunning medieval abbey. It's perched on a rocky island off the coast of Normandy, France, surrounded by vast tidal flats that dramatically change with the tides. We'll talk about that a little more in a minute. It looks like something out of a fairy tale. The island is crowned by the abbey, a marvel of Gothic architecture, and is encircled by a small walled village with narrow cobblestone streets. We spent about 3 to 4 hours exploring Mont Saint-Michel. We shopped our way to the top, and you can watch that video on my channel as well. Definitely take the tour with the iPad of the abbey at the top. It was so interesting. You can't miss that. The island is connected to the mainland by a causeway. Mont Saint-Michel is both a UNESCO World Heritage Site and a popular pilgrimage and tourist destination. So from the top, you'll have breathtaking views and a glimpse into history. Another interesting detail is that the bridge that's by our hotel was actually built for the pilgrims on their way to Mont Saint-Michel. You'll see groups of people in bare feet walking up to the abbey. You'll see them out with guides in the water surrounding Mont Saint-Michel. And if you're planning on taking a pilgrimage tour, I highly suggest that you do so with a guide. The tide is powerful and there's actually quicksand in the bay. So a few last things about Mont Saint-Michel. It is free. You do not need to pay anyone to go here. The only things you'll pay for are parking if you arrive by car, and you'll pay to see the abbey, and that was around 13 euros. And for an extra 5 euros, you can do that iPad tour that I mentioned earlier, which I highly recommend. There are so many cute shops all the way up to the abbey. But honestly, I really liked the gift shop in the abbey itself the best. And I have a video on shopping at Mont Saint-Michel if that's something you're interested in. Interestingly, there are a few hotels you can stay at here as well, and quite a few restaurants to try out, and we found them to be fairly well priced. Another thing to know is that there are a lot of stairs. You're walking up cobblestones and it's uphill all the way to the abbey. But you know what? It's pretty easy. There are shops, like I said, and by the time we had reached the steps to the abbey, I didn't even notice that we had climbed so high. I was so busy popping into the shops and looking at everything and taking pictures. There are some interesting narrow passageways that you might want to check out. They were really interesting. And we enjoyed lunch at this restaurant, and the highlight was the dessert. It was pretty fantastic. It was a flaming apple dessert with apples that were local. It was really, really delicious. This was our last stop before we turn around and head back to Paris for 5 days. We actually only have a 4-hour drive ahead of us, which is amazing. We have one more little stop to make in Rouen. We'll have a quick lunch there. The highways are quick. Many of them are toll roads. Don't let that scare you. Like I said earlier, I have a video on navigating the toll roads and what to expect, and I'll link that video right here at the end of this one. As you're driving, especially in early spring, you'll see a lot of trees with green balls hanging on them, and they look really funny, like something out of Dr. Seuss. And we were so confused because the trees are completely dormant, but the balls are lush and green. And after a little research, we found out that the green balls are actually an invasive species of mistletoe, and their roots leach into the tree, tapping into the water source and often killing the tree. And you'll see them everywhere. So the Seine River runs through Rouen. It's the same river that runs right through Paris. We are literally stopping here for lunch, and that's it. But this is a city that you could easily spend days exploring. It's not too far off the highway, and we're heading right to the center to see the cathedral. So Rouen is a historic city in Normandy, dating back thousands of years. It's known for its stunning architecture and rich history. At its heart is the magnificent Rouen Cathedral, built in the 12th century. It's a masterpiece of Gothic design that inspired some of Monet's famous paintings, and the city is also deeply connected to Joan of Arc, who was tried and executed here in 1431. Her legacy is honored at the modern church of Saint Joan of Arc and with a monument in the city's old marketplace. This is a place where history just comes to life. Another highlight is the ornate astronomical clock from the 14th century, housed in a charming archway that spans a cobblestone street. Rouen's mix of medieval charm, history, and culture makes it such a fascinating place to explore. If you have time, spend a day or two here. Well, it's been a great 5 days. I hope you enjoyed our trip to northern France. Let me know in the comments below if you're planning a trip yourself, where you're headed, and where you're watching from. Thanks for watching right to the very end. Do me a big favor and click on that thumbs up button, subscribe, and hit that bell to be notified for when I upload my next video. I'll add links to all the videos I talked about earlier. Check out the links I've added below to the places I mentioned in this video, and I'll also add links to our favorite anti-theft or anti-pickpocket backpacks, day packs, and crossbody bags that we use on every trip we take. Thanks for watching Tinagirl Travels, and I'll see you again soon.